All right. Well, welcome to Quixotic Heights, where we explore the stories that challenges, changes, and call us higher. Today's guest is a man who has lived at the intersection of faith, service, and storytelling. Keith Madsen is a semi-retired minister, an AmeriCorps worker, a mentor to young minds through chess, and an author whose work dares to confront life's hardest realities while still holding on to hope. From building schools in Haiti to educating communities about the opioid epidemic, Keith has seen firsthand the brokenness in the world. And yet, through his writing, he invites us to believe in something more. His stories don't shy away from loss or suffering. Instead, they transform those moments into seeds of renewal, redemption, and resurrection. With 4 published book novels through Quill Hawk Publishing, The Sons and Daughters of Toussaint, Searching for Eden, The Bridles of Armageddon, and Fallen Angels, Keith challenges us to ask, what if the world can be better than it is? And what role do we play in that transformation? This is a conversation about truth, faith, loss, and the quiet, powerful ways hope refuses to die. And with that, welcome, Keith, to Quixotic Heights.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Good, good. I know it's early in your neck of the woods,
Yeah.
in Eastern
Well, after 7 in the morning.
Yeah, you work from sun to sun, I think.
Yeah, I get up early normally, so.
Well, thanks for being here. Let's kick off the podcast with you telling us about your background.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I was a minister in the American Baptist Church for 42 years. And then I did something people call retired. I don't even know what that means anymore. But since retirement, I have worked at a community action council with AmeriCorps that I've did teaching on opioids and the dangers of opioids. And I did English as a second language, teaching Ukrainian refugees and Hispanic immigrants the English language. And so I've been very active. Now I am a hospital chaplain. And, one of the things I feel about writing is you cannot retreat from life in order to write. If you retreat from life, you don't have anything to write about. You've got to be out experiencing the world around you. You've got to be able to meet real people so that on the basis of those real people you meet, that's where you find your characters for your stories. And so interacting with life becomes a very important aspect of writing.
Yeah, absolutely. So was it your dream to become a writer, or did it just kind of fall into place for you?
Well, that's a good question. I had lots of dreams when I was a kid. I was going to be a center fielder for the Kansas City Athletics. But no, I also, even then, even in high school, I thought writing novels, that's what I'd really like to do. But, it just I never was, I think, brave enough to even start that until, about 20 years ago, I started doing those kind of things. So, your dreams evolve. If your dreams are static, your life's static. I think your dreams evolve. And so this has become an increasing dream of mine, to write, and not just to write, but to be heard and to be able to interpret life for people.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think shaped your life the most in terms of the many roles that you've played over the years?
Oh, what has shaped my life the most? I think my life has been shaped by two things. One, the positive side, the love of the people I've encountered, and the losses that I have encountered and others have, losses of loved ones. Those are the moments where you really start thinking about what life is about, and where you treasure and hold on to the good, whereas you try to refocus after you've experienced the bad.
Yeah. And would you say that there was a particular role, like as a chaplain or as a mentor, or whatever, that may have shaped your
Um,
an author?
Yeah, I'd say, yeah, my work as a chaplain, my work as a person active in what's happening around me politically also is
Mhm.
a great deal. Um, I just feel that again, it's part of being active in life. You see what's happening and you don't bury your head to it,
Mhm.
but you look at it and you rise above it, find a way to rise above it and help others rise above it.
Yeah. And I sense that you're politically active, that
Yes,
you do advocate for certain things. I see that occasionally on social media. Why do you
yes.
feel that that's important to voice your thoughts, your opinions, your advocacy?
Well, I am a Christian pastor, and Jesus said the two most important things, love God and love people. You cannot love people and watch them suffer needlessly, unjustly.
Mm-hmm.
So, sometimes people see those things and they want just to retreat from it.
Yeah.
They'll find an escape. Escapes are necessary sometimes because you can't constantly be tense over what's happening. You can't be involved in that all the time. You did need to escape. And I like watching old sitcoms like Cheers and Frasier and Coach. And I like those things because you get away from it for a while, but you cannot constantly do that.
Yeah.
And when I see people suffering in the world around me, I think, what can I do about it? Again, as a pastor, I remember an old hymn that was sung in my childhood, and I still hear today. It says, "Brighten the corner where you are," and
Mm,
that's the idea. You can't always change the world, but you can
hmm.
brighten the corner where you are, and that's what I
Yeah.
think a person needs to do.
I
That's what I
love
try
that.
to.
I
Yeah.
love that because I think in today's world, it's always about how many followers you have, how big is your platform growing? And I truly believe that, at the grassroots level, at your small corner of the world, you can affect change. It doesn't have to be this global mega platform that you have to be on as an influencer, right? You can have zero followers, not be on social media, and have such profound um, effect on change. And I always believe that, being that catalyst starts small and it ripples out, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So take us back to maybe, do you know if there was a defining moment that maybe pushed you or, kind of nudged you towards a life of community work and faith work?
Um, Well, a defining moment. You talk about many defining moments because, your life is not starting at point A and then that's all that you're working at.
Hmm.
But each time something comes up that you want to respond to. And a defining moment for me was meeting some of the Ukrainian refugees that came to this country
Mm.
and not reading about the Ukrainians in the press or hearing about it in the news, but meeting people. And I've developed some good friendships with some Ukrainians. And when I hear of the suffering, I talk to people they talk to loved ones back home who are hiding in a shelter and can not hear very well anymore because of the bombs that have exploded around them that have just battered their eardrums.
Mm.
And they're trying to just stay connected to family and loved ones back there in the midst of all this happening. So that's one thing. I've worked with a lot of different homeless people. Um, I one of my books, short stories, deals with homeless people. I was on staff in Portland with the homeless ministry. Yeah, there it is. And I just helped to feed the homeless people, and then I'd go and sit with them, and I wouldn't go sit with them trying to convert them or something. I'd sit with them, listening to their stories, and they have fascinating stories. And in the process of that, I learned that they're people So, that's the main thing. You learn that people are people, and you learn to love them, you learn to hurt with them, and you learn to somehow try to reach out and care for them too.
I'm really glad you wrote Fallen Angels, because when I was younger and starting my writing career, one of the things I wanted to do was to sit with our unhoused community members and really learn their story and capture that somehow. And life gets in the way, and I feel like you were the one that was meant to write it. And I'm so, with that, I wish more people would take that opportunity, because, our community members are out there, they're everywhere. And that little time of just listening to them, that in itself is validating, it's empowering, it's giving them dignity, despite the circumstances that they find themselves in at that moment. So,
Yeah, I think what hurts homeless people, see them, out panhandling on the street and stuff like that. And of course, the tendency that a lot of people have is to not even look at them and
mhm,
to avoid them. And I think even if you don't want to give a homeless person any money, giving them a smile and stopping to talk to them can be a gift.
mhm. Yeah.
And that can be maybe the gift that they want more than anything.
Yeah, and it doesn't cost anything. It doesn't cost anyone anything, just to
Yeah.
smile and be kind. Yeah,
Yeah.
to be seen. Take us back to when you wrote your very first book, published or unpublished. What was that process like for you? Because sometimes we write things and then we throw it away, and
Oh God, yeah. I've written several things that have never gotten published, even anyway. But the first book actually was because I got divorced.
Mm,
Yeah, you talked about that's another moment in my life. I went through divorce as a pastor. Had been married for 13 years, and I was a youth minister in a church. And so after I went through all that I went through, I wrote a book called Fallen Images: Experiencing Divorce in the Ministry.
mm,
And I wrote it not only based on my own experiences, but I sent out, letters to interview uh, pastors across the country and their wives, spouses, who had been gone through divorce. And so I wrote that book. That was published. That was published by Judson Press, which is a denominational press for denominations. And so that was my first experience publishing something. I also wrote a book during the height of the Cold War and atomic missiles and nuclear energy, nuclear weaponry, and it was called A Garden in Winter.
mm.
And it was about nuclear winter. People in the United States, after a nuclear war, experiencing nuclear winter, and trying to decide, are they going to start closing their hearts to other people around them that might want to come and take their things? Or are they going to keep on trying to care for the people around them? And that would be
Yeah.
basic. And winter, the garden in winter is, can you maintain a garden of life in the midst of a winter that's trying to destroy life?
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote that.
That's book a fiction or nonfiction?
It's fiction.
Okay.
It's A Garden in Winter, and I had put it out to several presses, and but just as I had put it out, Reagan was able to negotiate a nuclear arms compact contract, I guess it was, and you know. The press that when we were considering, we're thinking now that this is going to not be that much of an issue, so we're going to decline. So,
Mm-hmm.
I've thought of rewriting that book for today, which I might do.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you've got a lot of stories in you. How many are in the
well,
works?
when you're 76 years old, you've got a few stories.
And I'm glad you're writing them. So how many? what are you working, like how many are you working on at one time right now? And then, how many have you published or have been in
Well, I
that?
published five. I've published the four from through Quill Hawk, and then one that I've self-published, which is American Heresies, Reclaiming the Faith of Jesus Christ from Donald Trump, and
Mm,
talking about my political activism again.
yeah, my eyebrows are like,
I just been upset by the destruction of Christianity by trying to connect it with Donald Trump. That's, I can't think of it anyway. As a chaplain, I meet a lot of people who are spiritual and they want to connect to God, but they're so angry at the church. And they get angry at Christianity because of its falseness at times. And I think what Trump has done was to magnify the falseness of what his Christian faith is, supposed Christian faith is about, and some of the other people that back him. So, I'm still trying to, as a pastor, trying to defend what Jesus was about.
hmm hmm yeah, brave man, and good for you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, those are the books I've written.
And you've been in anthologies, I think, right? Was it Different Flickers?
Yes, Distant Flickers. I wrote,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The story I started out with, trying to remember all these stories. It had to do with, being real or being fake and things like that. I can't really talk too much about that story, but I also wrote a short story for different murals that have been published, and one was based on a Native American that I published eventually in Fallen Angels, but originally it was in a book or a journal that was about justice and stories about justice.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked a little bit about Fallen Angels and what that book is about. Tell us a little bit more about the other three books that you published with Quill Hawk.
Well, let's see. Let's talk about Searching for Eden. We are in a little war right now, Iran. And people think about Iran as this country that is connected to terrorism and all. But Iran also had some other things about it. One being that it contains what was once Persia, one of the great countries of the world, of the ancient world. And in addition to that, in the story of Eden, if you were to think about where might Eden have been, had it really existed. People argue, is it a myth that talks about, truths, or is it an actual historical story? But even if it's a myth that exemplifies truths, it was most definitely based on some sort of historical thing. So if Eden had existed, it was between the Tigris and Euphrates River in the area of Mesopotamia, which means either southern Syria or northern Iraq. And that's a likely place for it. So here we're thinking about a place that's being totally destroyed, and it has been for some time. And it was once said that you can't turn over a bunch of dirt anywhere in Iran without finding historical artifacts about ancient civilization. And so, Searching for Eden. This is a story about a man who loses his daughter to cancer, a 14-year-old girl. And, I've dealt with that a lot as a hospital chaplain and previously as a pastor. And he's devastated. But before she dies, she wants him to read to her from the story of the Garden of Eden. Why? Because she always loved gardens. but also the idea of a place where there was no death and where innocence reigned. It was just such an appeal to it. So he reads to her in that story. He's not a particularly religious person, but he reads to her in that story. And after she dies, he wants to find something to make life good again, some place to go that can restore him. And so he has some money left, that he had set aside for his daughter's education and other things. And he hires an archaeologist who specializes in the Middle East. And he goes looking for the Garden of Eden. And what he's really looking for is a place of goodness within himself. Can life be good again when you really lose somebody that's your life? Mm-hmm. That's an essential question people face time and again. Can life be good again? How can you find life to be good again? And so he goes searching, and it's not just about finding an actual place, but it's about finding within himself that goodness that Eden represented. So that's what that story is about. Now, I've got a passage here that I'd like to read from it.
Please, yes, please do.
In this story, Evan Jordan, who's the man that lost his daughter, he's there, and they found a place which archaeologists feel, if even existed, could very well have been the place. And it's in a kind of an isolated valley in northern Iran. And he's there, and he's with this archaeologist that he's fallen in love with, Jessica. And she's trying to recover from having been in an abusive marriage. And then also a Hispanic prostitute, that 14-year-old girl that they'd somehow adopted. And she's seeking her innocence again. And along the way, they've gone through the war zones. And they came alongside of a young 5-year-old girl who was crying and running along, and whose mother and dad had died, just died. She'd seen it from explosions. And they picked her up to protect her. So they're at this place, and they think might have been the Garden of Eden. And so that's where this story starts out. And I just want to read to you the passages from that. Evan glanced around the grove, and a light rain had recently fallen, and a rainbow arched over a distant forest. Everything around him looked like it came straight from a fairy tale. He stopped the car when the dirt road ended. Without even speaking, everyone exited the car and went in different directions. Evan, for his part, walked past several fruit trees to a small path which meandered into a thick forest. As he wandered leisurely down that path, the smells of the forest, the pine, the decaying mulch, the moist earth, filled his nostrils and intoxicated his spirit. Birds of an infinite variety of color sang and flew overhead. The voices seemed to be less ones of screeching warning than of exuberant celebration of life, voices that provided the harmonic background to a world which blended as one. Suddenly, a large bird landed on Evan's shoulder. He sucked in his breath and for a moment thought of pulling away and swatting at the invader. But just as he thought came to his mind, he froze in place. The bird was perhaps 10 inches tall and with black and with both red and blue markings. He showed no skittishness about having landed on a life form so much larger than he. He simply looked at Evan in the eye, cocked his head to one side as if he just asked a profound philosophical question. Evan noticed the sharpness of the bird's beak and considered how easy it would have been for the creature to use it as a weapon, jabbing at Evan's eye and blinding him. And yet Evan deliberately put up no barrier to such possible assault. Rather, he slowly lifted his finger to a place in front of the bird's head, and the bird responded by rubbing his face against it, as might a common house cat when greeted by its owner. Then, as suddenly as he had arrived, the bird flew away. The flowers Evan saw along the path may not have been as forward or at least as mobile as the bird had been, yet in their own way, they also invited Evan to come close. Their colors were vibrant, and try as he might, he could find no evidence of gnawing insects, disease, or the discoloration that comes from inadequate nutrition. It would have been the pride of his wife's garden. Evan smiled. This was a place where Sarah would have settled, at least until he came along and pointed out other places to go. Was this the place Sarah had pictured in her mind when she'd asked him to read of the garden? Evan could certainly feel her presence, but for the first time, sensing that presence was not accompanied by sadness. It was accompanied by a feeling of peace, a feeling of acceptance that life had gone on unabated. Evan continued down the path and came to a rock formation. As far back as he could remember, he had never come to a rock formation that did not invite him to climb it. And that is what he did. Each step upward invited another until Evan came to the top, a rocky crag that extended over the lake below. The water was so clear that he could see fish swimming in large schools well below the surface. These were not tiny, newly spawned fish, but large ones, which, if caught, would overflow a skillet, even when filleted and trimmed. And yet catching them in such a place would seem a violation, not of human law, but of a divine system. As Evan breathed in the freshness of the air around him and felt the warmth of the sun shining down from a now nearly cloud-free sky, tears came to his eyes, and he did not know why. He brushed the tears away and scanned the view before him. From the grandeur of the mountains encircling him to the thick green forests, the pristine lake, and the rich soil that gave life to a more varied biome than he had ever remembered seeing before, all the life around him fit perfectly together. Some movement at the water's edge down below drew his attention. Carmen emerged from behind some trees, fully naked, and carrying an equally naked little Amina. Jessica, also having shed all her clothing, with the exception of the cast which remained on her leg, followed right behind. Evan's initial reaction was to turn away. He sought to shield their private moment from his own eyes that had been polluted by a lifetime of being male in a culture of sexual obsession. Eyes which held in them the DNA of sin accumulated from millennia living outside the garden. Then Evan remembered a passage from the Bible, a passage read for his own mind, but which now spoke to his spirit. They were naked and were not ashamed. As Evan looked down at the females at the water's edge, he saw no shame. Carmen frolicked in the cool, clear water, diving under the surface, only to emerge again in a leap, lifting the lake's waters toward the heavens. As she did, Evan could see the cleansing permeating the young girl's spirit. Her lithe young body, so quintessentially female, was declaring its emancipation from what necessity and human lust had pressed it into becoming. She was emerging as an entirely new creature. And yet she was also an incredibly old creature, a reflected image of womanhood's beginning. The smile on her face and the giggle in her laugh was the smile and giggle of a little girl, unweighted by her past and alive with a love for life. Carmen once again dove underneath the water and emerged like a leaping dolphin that fully expected to leave the confines of the earth. Evan saw it all as a hymn of praise to God. Amina stood waist deep in water closer to the shore, and Evan was amazed that her eyes, once seemingly so old, now sparkled. She watched the little girl who had carried her into the water and sought to mimic Carmen's actions, only instead of leaping up high once, she made a series of little jumps while she spun in a circle and splashed the water. She was cleansing both body and mind of the blood that had been spilled in front of her, at the same time being water birthed into a world of innocence. Above them both, with her naked body standing firm, erect, and stretched out with her arms to heaven, was Jessica. You could see her wipe tears from her eyes, but an ecstatic smile on her lips transformed the meaning of those tears. She stood as if in an only recently sculpted masterpiece of her creator, emerging from the rock on which she stood and the plaster of her cast to flow alive into the heavens. The wounds on her body seemed from where Evan stood to be miraculously healed. And it was as if watching her strength gave him strength. It was then that he became aware that his own leg no longer throbbed with pain. It all fits, doesn't it? The words came from Dr. Goldman, who had come up behind them. Evan nodded. Do you think this really is the place? The old man shrugged. Does it matter? He sat down beside Evan on the rock. What matters is, does it give you what you've been looking for? For me, it does. This is what the world was meant to be, but it still can be. Evan nodded again, but I think people would still die here. I think so too, said Dr. Goldman quietly. And that's okay? Gotta be. Yes, I suppose. Evan cupped his head in his hands and scanned the horizon. So what do we do? Study it, absorb it, let it penetrate into our very souls, and then what? And then leave it. Leave it? Yes, I'm afraid so. Leave it. Dr. Goldman took off his glasses and cleaned them on his t-shirt. Eden isn't for living in, not while the rest of the world is in such a hell. It's for renewal and restoration, for rearming yourselves with something to take home. It's like a rule of the universe. You can only hide in the garden for so long.
It's a beautiful scene. And it's interesting to listen to you read it, because I've read it, of course, the book, and to rediscover it today is amazing, but also to rediscover it through your reading and your interpretation of the scene and the voice and the narrative was truly a treat. So thank you, Keith, for that. Very poignant story. What about the other two, Bridles of Armageddon and the Sons and Daughters of Toussaint?
Okay. Sons and Daughters of Toussaint. It's a story that came out of my experience going to Haiti.
Mm.
And when I went to Haiti, I went down there. I've been there 5 times, and I went down there to really work with another team of missionaries, or short-term missionaries, to Haiti, and to build an elementary school, help them build an elementary school. And we'd go down there and we'd visit the people and we'd see the work that's being done. But the people, that's the main thing. You know, when I went down there to Haiti, the statistics of suffering people became people. People I learned to love and know, and to see their joy as well as their suffering, to see their love for each other. That was so important to me. And in order to go down there, they suggested we do certain research on the history of Haiti, and which I did. And Toussaint Louverture, who was called the father of the Haitian Revolution, and all that he did to try to bring Haiti. See, at one point in time, people say Haiti has just always been poor, desperate, and it's just hopeless. You know, that's what sometimes people say. But Haiti has not always been poor and desperate. At one time, the time of the 1800, they were the wealthiest colony in the Western world. And the wealth was built on coffee and sugar and slavery. And Toussaint had a vision where it no longer would be built on slavery, but rather blacks and whites would join together to have a vision of that country being prosperous and yet ruled jointly by the races as equals. That was his vision. And Napoleon Bonaparte didn't like that vision, I guess. He wanted to stay under France, and so he had him kidnapped and taken off to a remote castle in France where he died of exposure.
Mm.
But this novel is about a descendant of Toussaint wanting to revive that vision for the country. And he gets this idea that we can make Haiti, we, not somebody else, not some other country, we can make Haiti prosperous and well again. And he's got this excitement. He's a college student, so he's full of idealism and all. And so he wants to go do that. And he meets well, he doesn't meet, but he falls in love with this girl. Now, her vision is she's beautiful, and she wants to go to Haiti or to the United States and New York City to become a famous fashion model. And that's her vision for her future. And really, going down there, I visited with college students at one of the colleges there, and their vision almost invariably was, I want to get out of here and go to the United States and make money.
Mm.
Was their vision.
Yeah.
And can you blame them? So these are the contrasting visions that they're fighting with. And the two people fall in love. And how do you reconcile two visions of what your future is going to be? It used to be that a woman, when they fall in love and want to marry a man, her vision meant nothing. It was follow the man's vision. But today people don't do that anymore, and I think that's wise, and that's right and good. But when you have two contrasting visions and yet you're in love, what do you do about that? How do you blend them? And so that's what this book's about, is to have them blend their visions into finding a way. Can they save their romance and also do what they can to save their country at the same time? And the sons and daughters of Toussaint. And I think it's an important, beautiful vision for them. And they seek to be able to make a difference in the world in that way.
Wonderful. Thank you. Do you want to give a quick little blurb about your other book, Bridles?
Well, I was thinking maybe I'd say more about fallen angels.
Okay.
I think I told you a little bit about fallen angels, about how I, conceived of this book because I visited there with the homeless people. And to me, their stories needed to be told. Now, the book Fallen Angels isn't about, their actual stories, because I only know certain parts of it. They were based on their stories. It was not their stories. But I thought maybe I'd read a part two of Fallen Angels. And this is a story of a woman I met that this church, and she was about 5 foot tall, 90 years old, living on the street.
Mm.
And she told me that she was the body double for Judy Garland in movies.
Mm.
And I think, okay, is this some sort of hallucination?
Mm-hmm.
Is this some way of trying to gain some sort of notoriety that she didn't actually earn? But what she told me was that, she wasn't body double for Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz, but she was for in some of his other movies, and really more of it, not just a body double, but a stand-in and things like that. And she married a man on the set who worked on the set, one of the best boys or whatever you call them, and he died of cancer. At that time, the staff of the set didn't get any kind of medical care, insurance. And so they used all the money they'd saved to try to save his life. And he died. And she was left with nothing.
Mm.
That was her story. So do you believe the story? And this story is about her encountering people on the street, and they all have their stories. And do you believe their stories? And one of the women they met said that she had been to Juilliard, and she didn't believe her. She didn't know if she believed her. But this is the encounter I wanted to read about. and how those characters encountered each other.
Mm.
And this is when the woman who I believe she was a stand-in for Judy Garland, she comes into the church, and the woman who had gone to Juilliard, according to her story, was playing at the piano. At the top of the stairs, the music pulled me up down a hallway into what I knew must be a reception hall the peacemaker had spoken about. Rich walnut paneling, flanked stained glass renderings of biblical figures, and elegantly framed portraits of what I assumed were former pastors. Overhead arched a domed ceiling featuring skylights and more stained glass. In the center of it all stood a mahogany grand piano, and on the bench of that piano sat Crazy Jane. She played what I recognized as Chopin's Nocturne in B-flat minor number 9, and she played flawlessly. I marveled at how the person at the piano bench seemed like someone else entirely from the frightened, disoriented person who I sat beside on the street. Her fingers flowed across the keyboard and her body swayed with power as the music seemingly infused her battered soul. I walked up closer, not wanting to disturb or embarrass her at the prospect of an audience, and yet something within me couldn't keep quiet. "I didn't believe you," I whispered. But within her range of hearing, she looked back and smiled. She did not respond verbally, but her music transitioned effortlessly into the more recent classic which she knew would delight me, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. No, I had never danced it in performance, nor was I a stand-in during the movie from which it had come. But ever since I had met Judy Garland, it had spoken to my imagination. Now, once again, the piece spoke to my heart. In my mind's eye, I could see that rainbow which had been missing from my life. And perhaps my mind played tricks on me, but I could also envision my younger self in a gingham dress dancing along a yellow brick road. I lost myself in a dream. Was it all a dream? I asked when Crazy Jane finished playing. She cocked her head like a confused puppy. "When I was a child, my mother always used to say I had an imagination like no child she'd ever known," I said. "And of late, my imagination is all I have. I don't know. You know what they say about old people. I have these memories. Were they ever any more real than the yellow brick road, the flying monkeys?" Crazy Jane turned to her piano keys and played them once again. This time the melody which came spoke to my whole body. "Get Happy" from Summer Stock. It was one of my clearest memories, dancing to that song. What amazed and delighted me was not how my mind remembered it, but how my body did as well. "Sing hallelujah, come on, get happy." The words danced through my mind as my 90-year-old feet began to tap, and my arthritic body began to sway and twirl as if it were once again in my late 20s. I shuffled under a church dome to music about a judgment day and strutted past stained glass with words singing in my mind about taking the Lord's hand. My body became the song, and my mind just watched. Still, the watching was pure pleasure, as if a whole lifetime I returned to my adolescence, rediscovering orgasm. My heart raced, but in an exciting, not in a frightened way. And all the time I had a picture in my mind of Gene Kelly and the Wings watching me. The music so took hold of my spirit that I only slowly realized Crazy Jane had stopped playing. The clapping in the wings alerted me. From the hallway had come down earlier emerged a man with salt and pepper stubble, applauding with enthusiasm. "Bravo, bravo," said the chief peacemaker. I looked at Crazy Jane, who rocked back and forth on the piano bench. "I missed that note," she said. "I missed it. I'm no good. No good. I missed it. I never should have tried that song. Never should have tried. Never should have tried." "What note?" I asked. "You were great." "She won't hear you," said the peacemaker. "Right now, the only voices she can hear are in her mind." "But she played so well. Can't she see that?" "No. Seeing it would be scary for her. Why? The peacemaker shrugged. You told me to come here, and I found that maybe she was telling the truth, but why did she say she played a viola? Well, perhaps she did. I know she played the flute and the violin. Anyway, she can't carry a piano around the street, and she had seen the soloist. I managed to score a couple of tickets, and I gave one to her. I danced, I said, my mind not letting me flee too far from the moment. I saw. I didn't even know I could do that anymore. The peacemaker laughed. Well, your body apparently did. I smiled as the memory refreshed itself. And I looked again at the peacemaker. You said we would talk later about what you had fallen from. He put his hands in his pockets and looked down at the floor. Before he did, I saw escape in his eyes. Of course, maybe this still isn't the right time, I whispered. He stood there for a moment, shaking his head. Then he looked at me and smiled himself. I fell from what was perhaps the greatest height of all. You are an angel fallen from heaven? He shook his head. I was a teacher.
Wow. Okay, I need to know who the peacemaker is.
Yeah.
Incredible. Thank you. Your books, you lean into the pain and suffering of humans and bring from that hope and redemption. Why do you think your writings kind of lean into that? Because you're very spiritual in nature. You could have easily written, Christian romance or but you chose these hard stories. Why do you think you lean into that?
Because I just think people can't ignore the hardness in life and just try to ignore it. But I do romance too. I mean, there's romance in every story.
Sure.
And they are part of life. But I think I don't want to write stories that are where there's the romance and then everything else to the side.
Mhm.
That's not life. That's not what I write. That's not my experience. But I think empathy for the human condition is what we're called to have. That's part of what, I mentioned. Jesus said, love neighbor, love God, love neighbor. And that's part of loving people, is having an empathy. But not just seeing their pain and submerging yourself in the pain of people, but seeing the hope. I like to make my stories about hope. Every story ends in hope. And, is that realistic? It is, if you want it to be. Your story can end with just nose diving, fire, into fire and flames as you crash.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can talk about hope. You can find hope.
Yeah. So one of the things you also do is play chess, teach the youth chess.
Yeah.
In that experience, what do you think the young people have taught you?
Yeah, the young people, I teach kids chess and listen to them and watch them. And you know what? One of the things that makes one humble is you teach kids chess and then they beat you.
Fair and square.
Ah,
Makes you a good
that
teacher.
happened. But I think chess is about life. And this is one of the things I've learned. I mean, I started learning chess as a kid, but I didn't really restart it until I was near retirement. And I started learning about it and teaching kids. And what I find about chess is that there's some important lessons about it for life. In fact, my son's daughter Toussaint, and also, son's daughter Toussaint starts out with people playing chess. But the important lessons that it talks about are these. One, people think that in order to save the world, it takes this big, strong, larger than life character who comes in and sweeps in and saves America. That's not the way it works. It's not the way chess works. People who play chess using the queen, which is the most powerful piece, and trying to use the queen to just do everything and attack they lose invariably.
Mm.
You win at chess by winning as a team. Each piece has its own skill, and each piece contributes to protecting each other and being part of the mission of getting to the other team's king. If you don't use them as a team, you will lose. That's an important issue. The other thing is you've got to see the whole board in order to win at chess. You cannot micro focus on one party. And that's what most people do politically and in life. They look at one little thing and they don't see the whole picture. And in the end, that's not a winning strategy for approaching the challenges of life. So you got to see the whole picture, the whole board, and what's happening over in this corner, this corner, this corner, and what you can do to approach your goals. The goal of chess, I don't think of chess so much as beating an opponent. I think of it as beating the obstacles in your way as you seek your goals in life. You have to figure out, how do I get past those obstacles and get to my goal?
Mm-hmm.
So all those things together, working as a team and working towards your goal and seeing the whole picture. I think all those are important parts of life as well. And this is what I teach kids. And sometimes they remind me, hey, Coach Keith, you didn't see the whole board that time.
They always take things and then they turn it around on you.
That's right. Why do I teach you these things for you to get back at me?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. What would we do without the youth in our lives? We can learn so much from them, and vice versa. It's a beautiful thing, beautiful dance. So one other thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap up was the opioids. You spent some time opioids.
Oh, the opiates, yes.
Yeah. You spent some time with like, how did that come about?
Well, it just came about because I saw this opportunity of working at the Community Action Council through AmeriCorps, and what they needed was somebody to teach about opioids. And I knew some things about that. But I didn't know a lot. And so when I went there, I started studying videos of people who've gone through the opioid crisis and the whole story of how it developed, and learned that it just mushroomed fast. And people today think, oh, well, fentanyl, that was the main thing. But and that has been a really vicious drug. But back at the time that this thing started, it was OxyContin, which is oxycodone continuous action, and they were marketing that. Purdue Pharma was marketing that as a cure-all, and they developed that 10-point, what's your pain level, and you got to get your pain level down to like 0 or 1, and you can't do that in life. But at any rate, they had these OxyContins that were tremendously powerful, and people got addicted. And people get all judgmental on people who are addicted and saying, "Oh, why'd you let that happen to you?" 90% of the time, it starts with an injury for which they get prescribed a drug.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time that this got started, doctors didn't quite realize that, the power of that addiction. And they were, prescribing medicine for many days, and people would get addicted. And all across the country, millions were dying. Millions were dying from opioid addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's part of what we face is commercialism of a drug company, but that happens with many companies, ending up destroying people. And
Yeah.
that's a concern. So I've tried to talk to kids about that, but again, sometimes they teach me back. I remember talking to a middle school class and one kid saying, yeah, I know all about this. I hadn't, well, I don't live with my mother anymore because she was addicted. And I was born addicted.
Mm.
I've had kids tell me that I was born addicted because my mother was using drugs when I was in the womb. And I've had to deal with it all my life, And so, that's again part of empathizing with people and realizing that people are people, and judgmentalism is almost always destructive to that midst of it. The old saying is there, but for the grace of God go I.
Mhm. As we wrap up, Keith, are there any other topics that you want to cover or anything else you'd like to promote?
Well, I think I've solved all the problems of the world, haven't I?
I think so too. We're done. Kumbaya.
No,
Um,
no, I just feel like some people think, well, you live until you retire and then you're done with life. No, that's the great news. I'm
yeah,
just, I don't want to go back to my 30s or 20s. Definitely don't want to go back to my teens. Heavens.
yeah,
You experience each age and you learn in each age and you find new exciting challenges. That's what makes you alive. Once you stop finding challenges to face, you're done.
yeah. Yeah, there's no such thing as retirement, no matter what age you're in. And hopefully there's no such thing as retirement because you want to stay active, stay relevant, stay plugged in.
I think it more of as transition.
Yeah,
Transition.
yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
Keith, thank you so much for sharing your insights, your stories, your words of wisdom, for reading to us.
Well,
I
thank you for having me on. I enjoyed it.
Me too. Okay, well, listeners, Keith Madsen reminds us that true inspiration doesn't come from avoiding life's hardest truths, but from facing them with courage, faith, and a willingness to believe in renewal. Your stories and your life are a testament to the idea that even in loss, there are seeds of resurrection waiting to grow.
Mhm.
And if today's conversation moved you, challenged you, or made you think a little deeper about the world and your place in it, please share this episode with someone who needs that reminder that hope is not the absence of hardship, but the decision to rise through it. So be sure to subscribe to Quixotic Heights, leave a
And buy my
review,
books.
and buy your books, buy
And buy my books.
and leave a review. Leave a review. Stay connected. Um, yes, and please subscribe for more conversations to elevate, inspire, and push the boundaries of what's possible. Until next time, keep reaching, keep questioning, and keep climbing your own quixotic heights. And read all of Keith's books. Thank you again,
Oh.
Keith, for being here. I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you, Amy. I appreciate you very much. And you have been such a wonderful force in the lives of so many authors. I think you should feel really good about that.
Thank you. I love all my authors. I love the incredible work that you're doing. And this podcast has been so fun just to get to know, to know you more, to know the work, the behind the scenes kind of stuff. And I can't wait to see what other projects you work on. So I'm a
Thank
big
you.
fan. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.